First of all, y'all, Jarrett Roser. It is late on Sunday, September 1st, fresh off of LSU's 27-20 loss to USC to open the season out in Las Vegas, the fifth straight time that the Tigers have lost their season opener going back to 2020, that COVID-shortened season when they opened against Mississippi State. It's now been Mississippi State, UCLA, Florida State in back-to-back years, and USC to make the fifth straight season opening loss, the first time since the early 90s that the team has lost consecutive season openers, now matches that 1991 through 95 stretch, most of the Curly Hallman era and the first year under Jerry DiNardo. And we'll talk more about this game and week one reactions overall on tomorrow's episode of Podnas with Daniel Hawks. That's kind of already in store each week to do a little bit of a weekend recap, but just quick reactions to this game. All of those losses to open the season have sucked, quite frankly, and this one is certainly up there in its own right because it's one that feels like LSU was in position and should have come away with this thing. When they go up 17-13 there late in the third quarter and then get a quick stop defensively, it felt like a moment for LSU and, what we would have seen in years past with some of the better LSU teams to take kind of an assassin mentality and go put the thing away. Go score a touchdown and stretch that thing out to 10. Instead, have trouble getting much going offensively and give the ball back. Defense gets another stop. And so you get yet another opportunity for an offense that I think we all expect it to be really strong this season to potentially put this game away with a lead in the fourth quarter. And instead, the possession starts backed up because of that unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. Offense can't dig its way out of there. And so next thing you know, Miller Moss and company make their moves quickly down the field and have the big touchdown pass to Jacoby Lane over Ashton Stamps, which I just thought was a really nice play on USC's part. A really beautiful throw from Miller Moss. And there were a lot of those throughout the game. And so I think overall takeaway is these opportunities for what is expected to be a really good offense to kind of lead the way. While you hope for an improved defense from a year ago, you still expected the offense to kind of lead the way behind that big offensive line. They were unable to cash in points at times to finish promising drives. It started right off the bat where you end up stalling, down close to the goal line, turnover on downs to start the season, just as last year against Florida State. And then these opportunities late to put the game away where you can't cash in and make good there. And so the defense played pretty well all in all, considering you're playing in, a USC team that is known for putting up yards, putting up points. And to have them at 10 at halftime and sitting there at 13 for a good chunk of the game until two late touchdowns. There were certainly plays that were frustrating that you hate seeing LSU get gashed, but at times you're going to give up some plays like that in college football in 2024, and certainly against an offense like a USC coached by Lincoln Riley and company and Miller Moss, who had a great game and had some plays where he was able to connect with 3 or 4 different receivers making really, really nice plays in tight coverage at times that hurt quite a bit. But at some point guys make plays. Defense was much improved from what we saw last year. This would have been so much worse a year ago in terms of the type of numbers that USC offense would have put up, but didn't capitalize on the opportunities that were there to put up more points for your offense, if you're LSU. And so that's really frustrating to start the season 0-1, really frustrating and looking at Brian Kelly's post-game press conferences, he was frustrated enough that he actually, punched the table at one point, talking about his frustration of how hard a lot of guys played tonight. Guys like Savion Jones, whose motor was running all night trying to get after Miller Moss, and Savion was certainly not alone. A lot of guys played really well. The frustration to be sitting at 0-1 for a fifth straight year overall, third straight year under Brian Kelly, and talking about the same things of an inability to close some things out and not having the type of mentality at times, the killer instinct that you want to see from the team. last year after that loss to Florida State, it was interesting to me to hear Brian Kelly talk about some of the dynamics of going to the season and still meshing, and how everyone kind of expects a finished product to start the season and come out of the gates looking like what you'll look like all season. And that's not really the way that it works, that a team grows not only in the preseason buildup, but throughout the season. And so when you're trying to, particularly in 2024 or last year, 2023, when you're trying to mesh so many pieces together in the transfer portal era, how difficult that is to be at your best right off the bat. But at the same time, and it is obviously different now in the 2020s than it was for those decades of more successful season opening performances. At the end of the day in college football, you need to win the vast majority, if not all of your games, to be where you want to be as a program like an LSU at the end of the season. Particularly prior to this expanded playoff, you needed to ultimately win all or all but one, maybe two as an SEC power team to be able to get where you wanted to be at the end of the season. So there's not really a whole lot of excuse to not being where you need to be to at least win your first game of the season. Certainly, you should still be improving from week 1 to week 2, big jump and on through the season. But everybody starts the season at the same time. There's no preseason matchups for anybody like there is in the NFL, and so you've got to be maybe not at your best or your peak, but you've got to be in a better position to start the season than what we've seen LSU be in recent years in terms of some things like mentality and untimely penalties and things of that nature. And I see people talk about the dynamic of why schedule these tough games right off the bat. You're only giving yourself this opportunity to be hurt, schedule an easier opponent to start the season. But for all of those years, LSU was really setting the table for some great seasons by opening the season, beating some big opponents, whether it be a TCU or an Oregon or a Miami or a Wisconsin. They opened against Mississippi State previously, Arizona State, Oregon State, and the list goes on. And so UNC, there's been a long-standing tradition of starting these seasons with big games and coming out and putting on at times a bit of a show, like that Oregon game where you kind of put the rest of the country on notice and also build a huge amount of confidence for your team to kick off the season. And so I don't know. There's something to certainly the scheduling dynamic, but at the same time, it's not like all of these years when LSU was performing much better in season openers, they were scheduling cupcakes. And you can look at Brian Kelly losing these 3 openers the last few years, but this is over multiple different coaching staffs over the last 5 years. And the good news is that in the expanded playoff era, there is more room for error in dropping an additional game at some point and still being able to make your way in. And if you're peaking late and are getting to where you feel like you're in a better place by late in the season, a lot is still in front of you, despite the season opening loss, which has not always been as much of the case, prior to now. But still just tough, man. Tough to start the season with a loss. Tough, as I mentioned before, in this case, because you felt like it was there for the taking and you let the thing get away. Wrap it up there. We're already, pushing closer to 10 minutes. As I mentioned, make sure to check out this next episode of Podnas on the Louisiana versus All Y'all channel, where Daniel and I will talk a little bit more about this game, as well as some of the other action we watched during the first full week of college football around the country. Some of the other games that we had picked going into the weekend and had eyes on this weekend. But thanks as always for tuning into Louisiana versus All Y'all. I'm Jarrett Roser. If you get a second and don't mind, make sure you hit that subscribe button below. If you have any questions that you want me to answer, or topics to potentially talk some more about in the comments below or on that episode of Podnas tomorrow, feel free to comment and get involved. And would love to hear y'all's thoughts on what frustrated you most about tonight, or what some of your positive takeaways could be from tonight, or just how this loss to open the season compares to some of these previous 4. obviously a lot to unpack in a lot of different directions. But thanks again for tuning in. See y'all soon.